Guess we give a few minutes for people to join.
Mm-hmm.
People to join.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everyone, we're waiting for, give it a few minutes for everyone to get on the session. And we start probably five after, if that works for everyone. So thank you guys for joining. And just like all of our sessions, if you guys have any questions during the live stream, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and we'll look to address them either in real time or definitely before the session ends. So. We'll give it 2 more minutes and then we will start. Hopefully most of the stuff on my whiteboard is illegible. Giving away trade secrets for free. So. So we'll get started at 5 after here. And then of course this will be available after the session. So we'll get started. Thanks everyone for joining our info session. My name is Joshua Tech Dev Walker. I'm the VP of Black Orlando Tech and also one of the co-founders. Today's session is meant to be informational as we get into our, get closer to our fall cohorts. This session is near and dear to my heart with me working primarily in life sciences and big data. We encourage you to, like, share, and comment, and we look forward to sharing this information, more broadly after this session. As we know, there's a lot of folks looking to, skill up during this time with, the pandemic still going, especially in Florida. We're hoping that these 2 tracks will help, you guys skill up in the big data area as far as cloud. So we'll talk about this more, but there's really, these are 2 subsections of cloud. So cloud itself is in demand, but being in big data in cloud, and then definitely security in cloud are two very hot topics and have a lot of jobs and a lot of roles that aren't being filled. So we're hoping that these two cohorts, get everyone kind of moving in the direction that they want to, whether it being getting a new job or starting a new company. So with that, we'll do intros. I just introduced myself, but just to give a little more detail, I've been in cloud for almost 5 years now. I got my start in the startup community where basically I was working inside of an accelerator where part of it was helping, startups become cloud first, as in when they're going to like VCs for venture capital, when they're trying to raise money, starting in the cloud gives you a very strategic advantage because you're not paying for, your infrastructure and stuff ahead of time and things of that nature. So from there, I was just doing a bunch of like, free work in the community just because I wanted to learn, and I was basically getting paid in AWS credits, which are basically credits that you can use towards AWS resources. Then from there, someone saw me from the company I work at now, which is a global tech consultancy, and said, hey, you should apply. So now I'm a full-time consultant in big data and life sciences, and I look forward to, leading the second cohort. And that's a great segue into, my partner in crime, Gabe, that is leading the intro cohort for cloud, which is basically a direct pipeline to, my more advanced cohort. So with that, I'll let you introduce yourself, Gabe, and thanks for joining.
Sure. So, hey, everybody, I'm Gabe. I am a freelance cloud security engineer. I've been working with Bot as a DevSecOps lead, and just to kind of break that down for you guys. If you don't already know, it really stands for development, security, operations lead. So really the whole role is focused on really kind of integrating security into, cloud development. So I've been working with Bot as a member of the committee for the last several months. I'm pretty sure we're going to be coming up on a year in just a few short months. So I've been doing that, and now my role is to really, help teach you guys and bring you into cloud. I made the switch from public administration, which is, what I was doing before, really kind of just public service, because I wanted to try and integrate technology and, public admin or just public service, because I definitely see the demand and how the integration really serves everybody. So I wanted to do that, and I thought Bot was just an amazing way to do that. So I'm super grateful to be working with Bot. So yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and so my job would be really kind of introducing you guys to cloud, whatever what AWS is about, and get you guys started.
Perfect. I think this is a good segue to move into what is the cloud, which I'll let Gabe kind of lead that conversation, and then I'll add color.
Sure. So the cloud is really kind of this very ominous, confusing term that a lot of people don't really understand, and I definitely was in that boat too. It's an up and coming kind of, it's a very prominent revolution or transition from IT. It's really blowing up right now. Ultimately, what it is just the provision of IT resources, on a pay-as-you-go model. And that's really what AWS, what Amazon Web Services does, what Azure does, what Google Cloud does. They provide cloud services to you so that you don't have to provide them to yourself, because it is costly. It requires a lot of maintenance. It requires space, everything. It's just a whole lot of work. So these platforms really provide the services and the infrastructure for you to be able to just really rent it out and really kind of get the same kind of attention to detail and functionality that you would get from on-premise, but really kind of just using it as you go, as you need it.
Yeah, to add color, Gabe, is with how it was traditionally, and a lot of the work I do is migrating people from on-premise workloads to the cloud. Is before you would have to do a big forecast for like 5 to 10 years on the compute you're going to need based on the applications your group is running, and you would basically have to have like a psychic on your team to know like what you're going to build next year or the year after. So what would happen is you would come into situations where either you didn't use your capacity, which is bad because you wasted money, or even worse is that your demand was higher and now you don't have enough capacity to run your business or to scale your business. So the cloud really just takes that out of your hands, makes it so that that if you have a workload you no longer need, you can get rid of it. You can try out new things, and I think a big part of my cohort as well will be showing how you start and stop things. And Gabe, maybe, and I'm just talking about this on the fly, but maybe that's something I can help you with on your cohort as well, as like automating, shutting down resources and stuff to save money. But in a nutshell, the cloud really just enables you to be able to scale your business without having that overhead of thinking about every little detail of your infrastructure and housing it, where your company is. So,
yeah. So really, what the cohort that I would be teaching, is going to be focusing on is really getting you guys to understand the basics of the cloud, infrastructure and how it works, and really kind of, that really was it in a nutshell. But there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of the components that you see in really kind of traditional IT. And we want to know how that really translates to the cloud. So that's really what we would be focusing on, as opposed to the more advanced stuff that Josh is going to be focusing on. Automation, data, working with data, things like that.
So I can talk about this, Gabe. There's a ton of a bunch of different roles that you can fill in the cloud space, whether it be you being a cloud engineer, solutions architect who is more of a big picture thinker on building the whole solution and plotting out the whole solution the best you can, DevOps engineers who are basically taking the marriage of development and operations and using infrastructure as code and other facets to make it a seamless process for cloud deployments. SysOps engineers who are basically the people doing all the monitoring of performance and making sure if like something happens, like a server is 80% filled, then you're getting an alert for it so that you can go and fix it before it goes down. Another big thing for cloud is I always use the analogy of when folks back in the day, I guess I don't want to say dark ages because Oprah is super relevant still, but when people would go on Oprah, she would basically have like the book club or whatever, and people would hit that person's site and their site would crash because they only had so much server space, so on and so forth. So the cloud has a lot of ways to enable you from a SysOps standpoint where you basically can scale up effortlessly, and if you don't need that compute, scale back down. And then just to talk about more of the roles that aren't on this slide, there's a big harp on data engineers nowadays, and most time when they say data engineers, it has a heavy cloud component with most data being stored within AWS, Google Cloud, or Microsoft Azure. So if you can see money talks, these are very lucrative positions. 114 is a pretty good base of where most pay is, even accounting for like lower salary places like where we are, Florida. But these positions can be as high as 150, 175 in other places. So very lucrative, a lot of flexibility. Before even COVID, I was primarily working remote, and now that's been amplified times like 100 with them needing talent and not being able to relocate someone to go into an office. I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to add, Gabe, but I think really the underline is that there's a lot of roles out here and they're hard to fill, and there's a bunch of different companies that you could work for doing cloud. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is tremendous opportunity right now in cloud, and it's, the projection is that security and cloud computing and, the many different roles that kind of, fall under cloud computing are in high demand now, but they're going to be they're going to progressively become more popular and be in higher demand, as the industry grows. Right now, it's really kind of just exploding right now. And it has been for the last couple of years, maybe a little bit more quietly, but it's really taking off right now. And a lot of companies are choosing to use cloud to really kind of, scale back the need to really provision their own resources and monitor everything and really manage their own resources. It's becoming a lot easier. So this is definitely an industry where there is going to be, and there already is, a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, I was just going to say cloud is growing year over year as well, like exponentially. So there's a lot of industries that were kind of apprehensive about cloud, whether it be, and it's usually, sensitive data type industries like banking and healthcare and stuff, but kind of the writing on the wall now is that whoever can use the data the fastest beats out their competitor and is able to make the most impact, specifically when we're talking about curing diseases, which is, hits home a lot right now with us being in the middle of a pandemic. If you had to do that same type of computer on your own infrastructure, you would run out of resources really quickly. So now that they're adopting cloud, they need these new skill sets to be able to enable their growth so that they can make the most impact based on, their company's ethos. So.
Yeah. So another thing too about cloud is that, it's not just traditional IT moving into a different space. There's a lot of, and this is something that I personally have learned. There's a lot of room for programmers, and especially with automation coming into play. Automation is huge right now also, and the way that integrates with working with data and security as well. It's a great way to transition that you can transition that talent as well. So and really kind of use that to work in cloud. So there are so many ways that you can get into the industry. As long as you're really kind of you're tech oriented and you really want to try and find a way to integrate cloud into what you're doing. There are so many different ways because there are so many different roles that you can fall into.
Yeah, I can give some from my personal experience. Like, I never went to school for anything computer science. My background as far as education has been primarily in the entertainment industry. So everything I've been able to accomplish on the tech side has been from self-paced learning. And for how I got into cloud specifically was just kind of doing some general programming, working for a few different startups and companies. And I was actually going to go more of the data science route, but then linked up with some guys in town who were doing a startup that involved a lot of big data type solutions within AWS, and kind of have been hooked ever since. But as far as the barrier to entry, like getting a certification and be able to show that you can do concrete things, a lot of times has gotten people over the hump of that first role, including myself, where I work at currently, they were creating a new cloud practice, and it was just serendipity with meeting the right people, and then just being enthusiastic and having some stuff to show that I've done, that I was able to land that first role. But I agree with Gabe that a lot of it's becoming increasingly developer focused, which I think is a good segue into the slide that we're looking at now, as far as the two paths for the cohorts. But I would say no matter what you're doing in cloud, it's going more, developer focused. Whereas before there was kind of a stigmatism of like, oh, I'm a real programmer. I don't want to, do mouse clicks to create stuff, where that way of thinking and that way of creating in the cloud has kind of been like, old for a few years now. So if you're a programmer, I encourage you to check out the cloud, as it'll be a big part of your future, most likely anyway. And with that, Gabe, I'll let you introduce kind of your path on the introduction to cloud, and then I'll talk about my cohort, which is based on, analytics and data security.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, the intro to cloud is going to be exactly that. It's going to be really just a fundamental introduction to what cloud computing is, what it really means, how it fits into IT and cloud computing and just other kinds of computing, the developer roles, things like that, how it integrates with all of these different things. But specifically, we're going to look at everything under the lens of the AWS platform. So we're going to really be focusing on the fundamental architectures and services that really comprise AWS and that drive the business. It is probably the most popular cloud platform in the market right now. And it's definitely taken things by storm. So we're going to focus on that. And we're going to give you, we're going to have hands-on experience, lab exercises. So it's going to be helpful so that you can actually see what the platform looks like, so you can get to play with it, you get to understand the look of everything, the look and feel. It's not just going to be, telling you about it, but we're going to look at it. And so we're going to be setting up different, you set up your account, check out how to set up billing alarms, IAM roles, permissions. So like all of that falls under, security, monitoring, things like that. And if you're already familiar with the command line, then that's great. We're going to be using the command line to really access AWS resources as well, which I think is really fun. So all of this is really also going to be preparing you if you decide to sit for the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam, which is the introductory certification that you could get for cloud, for AWS cloud. So if you decide that that's something you want to do, then I'm definitely going to be providing you the resources that you'll need to prepare for that exam. So you'll be set, and you'll have somebody to really guide you through that, and to be in the right kind of space to sit for that exam if this is something that you decide that you want to pursue. So it's really going to be just an overall, just a taste of what AWS is about, and what it really kind of leads up to, which is the kind of stuff that Josh is going to be teaching.
Perfect. And me and Gabe will be tied at the hip, so anytime I can add any value over in the intro track, I will, and vice versa with Gabe being more the security expert, where a lot of my security experiences come from just from the amount of projects I've done. But with that, I wanted to talk about the cloud analytics and data security track. This is really more. And you'll see when it comes to certifications for AWS, there's kind of two mantras where either you're going kind of like vast, where they're having you cover a lot of material, or you're going like, a deep. So this is more like going down one niche path of data analytics, which is, a huge, which is booming, of course, with the amount of data that we have. We have more data than we're actually using across the globe. So once we're able to enable a company to use data to make decisions and to pivot in the market and things of that nature, they become extremely powerful and become a vital part of the business. And that's mainly what I do within, the cloud landscape or within the marketplace. So I also will be talking about in depth as the course goes on what roles are in demand, and I also will do like a refresher of AWS, but there will be kind of a prereq like amount of knowledge I believe that you will need. I would either say if you're fresh to AWS, this might be a really high paced course. I never discourage anyone from still taking the course because I've always been a crash course type person where when I got into tech, I would basically put myself in situations where I knew I had to stretch to be able to meet the demand of the project or what have you. So if you have a lot of if you're really self-motivated and super interested in data, I'm not going to persuade you from it, but it will be fast paced and kind of the fundamental stuff will be like week one, and then we're going to be off to the races from there. But in that week one, we'll do similar things that which are just prereqs in general. We're going to do the account setup. We're going to do the billing alarms. We're going to set up MFA so that you have an authenticated user for when you're logging into that account for security. Setting up your base VPC, which is like your initial network that we're going to be working in, far as where your data resources live securely, and then from there we're going to dive into the specific data services and when and why to use them. Specifically for this cohort, we're going to be aiming at like the cutting edge or bleeding edge of cloud for data analytics, where we're going to be working on primarily serverless workloads. And I say serverless in quotations because it's kind of misleading, but really it's just an abstraction of servers. So whereas before I use the analogy most of the time of like a parking space, where if you have an apartment and you rent a parking space downtown, whether your car is there or not, you're paying for that parking space. And that's kind of how servers are, where whether you have something running on it, if it's an on-demand EC2, which is AWS's brand of server, then you're paying for that usage no matter what. Whereas serverless is if we were, let's just say 10 years in the future and you had like a transporter, or if you're like a Dragon Ball Z fan, if you had instant transmission where you can move from one place to another transactionally, then you're only paying for like that split second of compute you need. So it's transaction based more than I need a pool of resources sitting here all the time just in case I do something. It's on demand compute power. So there's a huge learning curve for that, but that's where the market is going, and that's where the jobs are going, and I think that's where you could get a leg up, I say, from other cloud practitioners that are kind of going more the traditional route. Excuse me, talking a lot, dry throat. And then you're going to also learn about like the vital mechanisms to secure the data, because I always, kind of stress to clients that if your data isn't secure, your platform is useless, because once you lose trust in your users, or in my world, it's non-negotiable with it being like, sensitive data, whether it be PHI or PI data, which is the most sensitive data that includes like social security numbers and addresses and stuff like that, you don't want to ever get exposed to another party or a party that's not supposed to see it. And last but not least, really programming focused on like Python, Lambda, and Boto 3. And Boto 3 is AWS's basically automation engine for Python. So I put them both in this sentence because you like having a fundamental knowledge of Python. And don't get me wrong, we're going to do a crash course in Python. And the great thing about Python is that it's pretty human readable. So I think a lot of the code examples and the smaller chunks of exercises that we're going to be doing, if you do the crash course, you should still be able to keep up. But Boto 3 is AWS's basically proprietary version of how they use Python to automate things and manage resources within AWS programmatically. And the end goal will be to have a fully automated data lake. So I just wanted to talk about what the data lake is. And my shirt's getting cut off, but it's a t-shirt I got from reInvent, which is AWS's like premier conference, where it says what's in the data lake stays in the data lake, playing off of the Vegas term. But the data lake is really enabling companies to really share data and do big things with data, where imagine you have all of these sources, whether it's social media, whether it's a cron job running like emails into the data lake, but it's basically a repository of a bunch of different data sources that everyone has access to and is able to use. And more importantly, having like basically different segments of not only what type of data, but maybe raw data versus processed data. So we're saying, this data came straight in from social media. We did some type of transformation to it to make it useful for a certain type of thing, but you still have that raw data there in case somebody else wants to do something totally different with it. So the problem before, there was silos in data where, maybe you're in one company, but there's like 5 or 6 different silos and no one is sharing this data with each other. so you're not solving a big enough problem, or you're not learning from each other or giving each other data that could add value to whatever your role is. So the data lake solves for that by putting everything in one common place. And with, like I said, with us going the serverless route, that makes it so that all the transactions are really cheap, and it's also so makes it so it's super repeatable. So if you're using infrastructure as code, then you can, you know, copy and paste your basically your data lake somewhere else in case, you know, subsidiary needs it, or in Bot's case, when we build our data lake, if like another bot that's in like Philly or something needs it, then we can give it to them without a lot of hassle. So hopefully, you know, that will pique a lot of people's interest. Tons of roles. Even though it's a harder facet of cloud, it's totally worth it. And one of the reasons I'm super into life sciences is because I wanted my work to matter. So now, especially with COVID, you know, I've fortunately been able to, you know, work on various things that are contributing to, you know, going towards helping to fight against the disease. So I think hopefully you guys will join me for this cohort. And with that, I think we can open it up for questions, because I know we have a decent amount in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
So we could start from the top, and then Gabe, we can both tag team these. Miguel asked if you think these cohorts are, we would be able to take these together, like you could do the back end. And Brian Clancy, a good friend of mine, I've worked with him at the company before. We talked with him, and we do want to make it so that we have some cross-pollination. I think his cohort, my cohort, and Gabe's cohort are all on different nights. So I think you could manage to take, you know, 2 if you felt ambitious and had the time. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, Gabe, but
yeah, no, I agree. It should be, if you feel like it's something that you're up for, then absolutely. Can't discourage you there.
And to be honest, a lot of times with backend services are synonymous with the cloud nowadays. Another good question, what kind of computer capabilities? To be honest, that's the benefit of the cloud. You won't need like a powerful computer or anything, because all of the energy it takes to run your workloads will be in AWS. So any basic computer, the only thing that's going to be really written and run on your machine is probably like for my cohort, and I think even in some parts in Gabe's cohort, if you're writing like some code. But all of the code editors, you know, the most basic computer can handle, because it's just, you know, statically typed code. So
yeah. So for the intro class, I don't believe you need any kind of Python knowledge really off the bat. It never hurts, but you certainly don't need it. Not like Josh's cohort. We won't be working heavily with Python. We're really going to be working a lot with the AWS, you know, UI, and just getting familiar with that, and familiar with, you know, more common services like, you know, EC2, provisioning EC2. You know, working with more understanding how VPCs work, you know, SSHing into those things, or just, you know, using the command line to get into your EC2, things like that. So we won't be doing a lot of programming. So we're just going to really be working a lot with the UI. Shouldn't be.
I can't say anyone's interested in learning Python. This book has been great, and there's a free PDF version. I just like having like physical books. But learn Python the hard way is kind of like and I'm not getting like any kickback from this guy. I don't know this person, but it's kind of misleading. They basically go off the paradigm that that if you do something enough times repetitively and add incrementally onto that skill set, that you'll get good at it. And I'm pretty close to the finish of the book. And I had Python experience before, but it's a good one that if you had none, you know, you could start from scratch. And I'll drop some links in the comments as well for it.
Yeah, it definitely comes in handy. if it's something that you want to do, and you want to continue to do moving further into cloud, it definitely is something that you should have on your list, maybe as a priority later on. So it definitely does not hurt. But in the intro class, we won't be working with Python right off the bat.
Any other questions? Any questions about the schedule or anything? I guess I could just talk about it for a second, but basically it's a weekly cohort, where it's a lead session. So, and Gabe knows because Gabe was a part of my last cohort where, we meet for an hour or two, we go through the lessons and what we try to do too, as well as like, this isn't like a traditional course where there's like a lot of theory or fluff. Like all of the stuff that our slides are based off of is stuff that, I've gotten paid for or is in demand, like for real, and not, some weird abstraction that someone wants to do in AWS just because they can. So, and I also try to break down, and Gabe's teaching style is the same, where we want to make stuff in as much common language as possible. I know when I was getting in, I spent most of the sessions in, these career programmers like writing down these weird words they're saying and then go researching them later. So I try to account for that, and I promise I would never be that person. So hopefully, this will be the most relatable thing you can do to get into technology with, we're seeing our economy suffer from us being a economy of mainly tourism and service. So, we really have a heart for this, and if you're looking to cut over from kind of more traditional jobs, we understand the learning gap and we're here to help. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think unless there's any other questions, I think that's all we had. We just really wanted to make this, kind of a overview of what you can look forward to. And if you join Gabe's cohort, this isn't going to be the last time that we do cohorts. So maybe you do Gabe's cohort and the next time you join mine. Yes. For me and Gabe, it's just our first name at blackorlandotech.org. So Josh at blackorlandotech.org and Gabe at blackorlandotech.org. And I'm JW Tech Dev everywhere. So if you want to tweet me, Instagram me, whatever, I'm pretty reachable. So
yeah, you can reach out to me on via email. I'll definitely check that out.
Thank you, Kelvin. Our information is in the comments.
Mm-hmm.
We don't bite, and we won't make you feel dumb for any questions. So feel free to reach out.
Definitely encourage questions.
Yes, the data cohort is something that will be prevalent for probably forever. The reason being is Bot is working on our own data pipeline project, and like I said, the skill, and you'll see some overlap too, where Brian's cohort will have a lot of stuff to do with data, and of course Rose, who spoke on Wednesday, her whole, like, Rose is usually my end user, like where I'm making the infrastructure for Rose to do her computations and data science related tasks. So yeah, so data, it's never going to go away. Yeah, I would take Gabe's course first, and then I'll try to join Gabe's sessions, here and there as well, to see where, we can collaborate on maybe some like projects. Maybe towards the latter weeks, Gabe, maybe like in like week 7 or 8, we can figure out some bonus stuff we can do that would get people in the game for the data related automation stuff, but not be too much.
Yeah, because there obviously isn't a hard line between the simple stuff and the hard stuff. There's definitely a lot of blurring together. It's really just that, you're getting into kind of like a specialized area of cloud with data, and it gets pretty complicated there. So there's crossover, so we might be able to, combine things, crossover a little bit here and there to give you guys maybe a taste of, what you might expect moving forward if you decide to continue with cloud. And especially with data and security.
And I will say too, when you guys think about cloud, I think what was overwhelming for me in the beginning was thinking about how vast it is. I think AWS publishes like a few services a week, so it's it's not like you can ever keep up 100%. When you join an actual team within a company or you're in a startup, there's multiple roles. So what I would say is, have an inquisitive mind, try to learn about as much as you can, but really you're trying to learn as much as you can to figure out what you're interested in, because there's like, cloud practitioners that are primarily specialists on databases or on data engineers. There's, like I said, the cloud infrastructure architect who is more of like building out the whole solution and then having a team to work on that solution. There's just a ton of roles and a ton of niches. Now that we have like, Internet of Things where, data is coming in from like physical devices, whether it be like traffic lights and stuff like that. There's so many niches within cloud. I would say if you're starting in Gabe's cohort, really just be open-minded and enjoy all of the things you could possibly learn, and then you'll figure out what your thing is down the line. So.
Yeah. So data is one really big area, but another big area to think about too is security, because what you're doing is you're securing that data. It's a priority to do that too. So that's another really great area that's exploding right now, and that's just exploding outside of cloud, just in regular IT too. So
yes, for sure.
Another area you could check out. There are just so many different things you could do with cloud. It's pretty great. So you have a lot of options. So I definitely encourage you to check out your prospects if this is something that you decide that you want to explore further, because there's a lot of opportunity, and there are a lot of really, really small holes that need filling when it comes to the talent pool, when it comes to cloud.
Yeah, I think something, Gabe, you said is and something else will help you guys with is with your resume. So Gabe knows this extensively, but once we get towards the end of that cohort, I worked with like probably 75% of my cohort this last go around on just tightening up that resume and making it like cloud ready for when you're trying to switch over, or even if you were starting a business, being able to eloquently, state what your services are and what your value add is. So definitely looking to help with like your holistic future, more not just the skills, but how do you market those skills as well. So
any other questions in the comments? It's a good question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, yeah, we usually, like, because I always have a big picture focus for the cohorts, and Gabe is the same way. Is anytime we have a weekly class, we're talking about how that's going to fit into your career. So usually it's an overview of this is what we're working on this week. This is the concept that's that we're uncovering. But this is how it would fit in a real world scenario. Like when you go to this your 9 to 5, this is how this applies. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So everything we're teaching is going to serve a purpose. Obviously it's gonna make sense. In the cloud world, you want to somehow translate that. That skill is going to be useful. Moving into cloud, if that's something that you want to do. It's something that's going to be applicable.
And Gabe knows too that because I helped Gabe with this type of stuff in the beginning, where because I'm hiring people all the time, like I I can tell like a buzzword resume, you know, from 10 feet away. So making sure that you also don't fall into that that pit trap of like someone asks you about a line item on your resume and you're not ready to explain that, and that you just looked at, you know, the job description and kind of copy and pasted and didn't think through of like how you would explain how you did that or how you would at least do that. So
yeah. Anybody else?
right. I don't know if there's any. I guess with that, we can probably conclude. If anyone has any other questions outside, our information is in the comments. Like we said, we're easy to find. I'm happy to help answer any other things that pop into your head over the next few days, or even as we get closer to the fall classes.
Yeah,
you guys for joining.
Ask questions. No shame in that. Go ahead and send us emails, or you can reach out to Josh on Twitter too. I'm not on Twitter, but I'll definitely check my email. So. All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for tuning in.